Bit of backstory. I work with my mother in her wedding shop. I mainly wash up, clean, and make the teas and coffees. On rare occasions, I'm allowed into the fitting room when we have a client I'm a guy, so obvious reasons. The meeting and teas room is downstairs while all the dresses and fitting room is upstairs. And you can't bring your coffee or tea upstairs due to there being extremely expensive, pristine white dresses. So more obvious reasons. One day we had a client coming in for their schedule. I've never met this client before as she made the appointment online. But looking at the messages, I could tell the mother of the bride in particular wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. When they arrived, the bride and her bridesmaids seemed like the typical happy yet clueless duo. Very excited yet flustered, so me and my mother greet them with smiles and jokes to relax them a little. Entitled mother, on the other hand, looks like she's just walked into a pigsty, inspecting everything with disgust written across her mid-40s face. Or a demand to see her supervisor haircut barely scraping through the doorframe. I offer drinks and food, to which the bride and her bridesmaid happily agree to both. The entitled mother demands a black coffee, no sugar, and doesn't even look at me or say thank you like the other two. Immediately, I had a bad feeling. They all go into the tea room. The bride and her friend both happy to look through possible options online. Quick side note to anyone who hasn't gotten married or been in the wedding business. Most shops work by trying example dresses, ordering one the bride likes to her exact measurements, and then making necessary adjustments or accessories, making each dress bespoke and perfect. The bride is having a thrill looking at all the options. The entitled mother, on the other hand, repeats, I'm sure the price is negotiable whenever a dress was found the bride liked while looking online. After a quick discussion on what she wanted, the bride was eager to go try dresses on to find her perfect dress. Not skipping a beat, my mother is up and ready to go, until they all begin to make their ways upstairs. Excuse me, ladies, would you please leave your drinks on the table? There are no drinks upstairs. Both bride and her friend were very understanding and left their drinks on the table. Entitled mother, however, was not so understanding. Entitled, Mother, who do you think you are? You're just the staff. I'll finish my drink where I damn well please. I know what you're thinking. That's a very extreme response. And it really was. I was stunned, but managed to find my composure. At this point, my mother and the bride and bridesmaids had already made their way upstairs. Ma'am, I'm not saying this out of spite. You're not allowed drinks upstairs due to possible damages to the dresses in case you spill any. Entitled mother. Shut up and show some respect to your elders, before marching past me to the stairs where I'm not allowed to follow. I stood in shock, a 6'4" rather broad and muscular guy being talked down to by a woman who resembled the boulder from Indiana Jones. I stay at my station and my mother tells me after that, although she was confused as to why entitled mother brought the drink, she let it slide but kept an eye on her. Entitled mother, apparently the entire time, had been criticizing the price of every dress the bride tried on, not commenting once about how it looked. Saying things like that price is outrageous, it can't be worth so much, the fabric is so bad, etc. The bride then tried on a long, silky dress, lace and silk draping off, making it seem like it was moving like a liquid, one of my favorites. Entitled mother, however, wasn't so pleased. Entitled mother, take that thing off, sugar. It looks ridiculous. Bride, actually, Mom, I really like this one. Entitled mother, well, how much is it? She says to my mother, Mom, 2,200 pounds. Entitled mother, what? You're trying to rob us. This is nonsense. Entitled mother then stands up to touch the fabric to prove her point, but trips on the tail of the dress, pretty much dumping still hot coffee all on the dress. The crash and screams alert me, and I bound up the stairs and race into the room to see the entitled mother on the floor, so red, looking like she's going to have a stroke, in the bride and bridesmaids, with their hands on their mouths, in terror with the pristine white dress, now with a black pat, all down the side. My mother looks like she's ready to gut entitled mother right then and there. Entitled mother, you jerks made me trip and spill my drink. I've just had knee surgery. You'll be expecting to hear from my lawyer. No one says a word as we just watch her awkwardly get back up. Entitled mother, we're leaving, sweetie, and we're keeping the dress now it's ruined. My mother was too shocked to respond to that. I'm trying to keep my cool, and it's the bride who speaks up. Bride, Mum, we can't just keep it. Entitled mother, of course we can. They have no use for it, so we might as well keep it now. Her red exterior was now replaced with a sense of accomplishment almost. They were about to leave the fitting room to finally notice he's standing in the doorframe. Entitled mother, move aside, you jerk. You made the coffee in the first place. You made this whole mess. Now I'll remind you I'm 6'4" and have very broad shoulders, and she's about 5'6" in comparison. She tries to push past me, grabbing my arm and trying to jerk me to get past, but after a minute of me trying to keep my cool and her forehead veins popping in effort, she realizes she physically can't get past me. Knowing this, I have the biggest grin on my face. Me. You're going to sit back down and pay for the washing bill for the dress, or we will call the police. Entitled Mother Like Hell You Will. Who do you think you are, you jerk? Get out of my way or I will, and I'm not making this up. Screw you up. I just stare at her bright red face with the bride being held tightly by the hand, still in the dress and in tears. Ma'am, let go of your daughter and dip back down, please. At this point, Entitled Mother slaps me across the face. It wasn't the pain, but it was the shock that stunned me. Now you listen here, boy. My baby is going to have the wedding of my dreams, and I won't let a little jerk like you get in the way of that. She moves to smack me again, and this is where I will probably get some flack, but before she could get the swing in, I slap her in self-defense. I didn't punch her, I used only the necessary force to defend myself. At the first slap, my mom immediately called the police, and being that the station is just down the street, it didn't take long for them to arrive. In the meantime, Entitled Mother simply stared in astonishment, and what I must assume is fear at the realization that she just picked a fight she knows she can't win and freezes. The police arrive, and as soon as they come, the Entitled Mother is back at it with the threats and insults before being taken in. Cops asked if I wanted to press charges after we explained what had happened and show them the footage, to which we all said yes. Entitled Mother had to pay the cost of the dresses cleaning, got 3 months jail time for assault, property damage, child abuse, and apparently 5 other charges with her trying similar things at other wedding venues. We gave the bride a significant discount as we knew it wasn't her fault for what happened. She was extremely grateful, and we were even invited to her wedding. I'm in the car on the way to that very wedding 9 months later, which reminded me of this story. Epilogue. Firstly, the child abuse charge was meant for the bride's younger sister. I apologize for not specifying, but my mother followed the case more closely than I did and corrected me. Thank you for pointing it out. Secondly, the wedding was beautiful. It was in a spa on the seafront, and the ceremony happened on the sunbathing platform, and there was a big glass dome separating the platform from the roaring sea outside. Concrete mixers are big, ungainly things. Trying to maneuver them around a crowded job site is like trying to play miniature golf with a tennis ball. The biggest problem is, of course, other people, specifically other people's cars. Nobody is going to lug 50 pounds of tools any further than they have to. So if there is an open space near where they want to be, they park there. Never mind that it is right next to a sidewalk or directly across from a driveway that a crew is obviously prepping. It only makes things worse when it's done by people who should know better, and done intentionally. So we're pumping grout walls in the late afternoon. It already has me in a bit of a mood. Grout jobs tend to be very slow. Each cinder block has 2 cells, and the crew pumps the grout into those cells, filling them all the way to the top of the wall. Grout is really just a term for a weak concrete mix that is pumped super wet. It has to be that wet to make it all the way to the bottom of the wall. Otherwise, it sticks to the sides of the cinder blocks or gets caught up on steel reinforcement. There is a lot of stopping and starting, as well as a lot of moving the pump. It all takes time, during which that concrete starts to go off and stiffen up. Things only get worse on a hot day, and the subs will do anything to get more water in the load. Heroin addicts looking for a fix have nothing on grout pumpers eyeballing your last 20 gallons. As we move to a new street, we find a line of cars parked all along the side of the street we are working on, just far enough apart to take up as much space as possible without leaving enough room to get the pump in there. Turns out it is another concrete crew setting up to do patios. No problem. We're all concrete guys here, and they know how it is. We ask them to move. That I'm writing this post tells you what their response was. It turns out they are waiting for their own pump and mixer to show up, and they intentionally block the street because they don't want us to be in their way. Their crew chief tells us we can wait for them to finish and move on, or we can just work around them. It's pretty obvious he expects us to wait. Waiting is, of course, going to make the concrete go off even more and will rack up standby charges for the customer. But trying to work around their cars is going to mean blocking the street and rolling up the hose every time we move. Normally, the crew just carries it down the sidewalk, but we can't do that with the cars in the way. It would take much longer. Depending on when their pump shows up, it might not even save us any time. Still, Todd, the pumper, rolls his pump right up next to the lead car and feeds his hose out around it. At the best of times, a concrete pump farts and sputters like a nervous chihuahua, flinging small globs of concrete out the hopper. If the driver isn't paying attention and accidentally lets the concrete level get too low, the pump sucks in air. Feeding concrete pump air is like feeding a hippopotamus olestra. It's not pretty, and it gets everywhere. We probably end up moving that pump twice as many times as we have to, but it ensures that every single one of those cars gets to spend some quality time next to the hopper. We are done with the job and are washing out the pump when the crew chief, whose own concrete and pump still haven't shown up yet, storms over to complain about all the concrete splatter on their cars. I point out that we told them we'd be pumping there and asked them to move, but they refuse. At this point, he sees that I have a truck wash bucket strapped to my water tank and demands I let him use it to clean off his car. I tell him that a terrible idea. The stuff we use is designed to dissolve dried concrete, and it will probably damage his car. The concrete is fresh enough that he can probably just rinse it off with water. He isn't having it. He tells me to stop lying. If it doesn't damage my truck, it won't hurt his car. Besides, he's done this before and knows what he is doing. Now, keeping a concrete mixer clean is a downright Sisyphean task. No matter how hard you try, chutes overflow, pumps splatter, and plants huff cement powder all over your truck. There are a variety of chemicals used to clean off concrete, and most of the modern mixes are relatively safe for something that can dissolve concrete. Our plants provide a phosphoric acid mix. Relatively safe isn't the same as actually safe to any drivers that need it, so it is quite common for there to be a bucket of it stashed somewhere on the truck. Of course, part of what makes these chemicals safer also makes them somewhat less effective. That's why some of us will bring in our own cleaning products to fortify the company mix. These are not the friendly chemicals that will just leave you with a mild chemical burn. My bucket of fun dips down to the good old days of leaded gasoline, asbestos, and red dye no. 2. Still, I warned him, and he assured me he knew what he was doing. Besides, he's intentionally being stubborn and expects my sub to pay standby for his convenience. I let him have the bucket. I half expect him to stop when he pulls the lid off. The witch's brew in the bucket smells like Walter White's bathtub. Somehow, the fact that his nose hairs are curling up like a spider in a flame doesn't seem to faze him. Brush goes in the bucket. Brush comes out of the bucket. Brush slams onto the hood of the car with a wet slap. I can only watch in mute horror as the man proceeds to not just clear off the concrete, but bathe his entire hood in hydrochloric acid, rubbing it in to get out all those nasty water spots. It's like watching an orphan unwittingly skin his favorite puppy. None of us stick around long enough to see the final result, but it is already apparent that he has scrubbed off the clear coat and is in the process of etching brush marks in the paint. I don't want to be anywhere near him when that hood dries out. I let him keep the bucket. 24-year-old female, previously posted about one of my mother's younger friends, an entitled mother in her early 40s, who I first knew as carefree and wonderful until she had her first kid. That child ended up being a complete brat with her mother's encouragement. But the entitled mother had another child, a son who I kind of liked because he wasn't as intense as his older sibling. As of last night, that has changed. For context, my mother's greatest joy in life other than her kids is antiquing. She dresses every room in her house very carefully and will stop at every vintage shop around to find a piece of furniture, sometimes using road trips to find new antique stores and examine what is inside. I used to hate going with Mom to these stores, but since she took all 3 of us kids and told us that these used to belong to other people, I think it gave us an early respect for other people's things. We were never the kids to break stuff or jump on furniture in our homes or anyone else's, and I'm pretty sure that contributed to it. When she was pregnant with my oldest sibling in 1990, Mom found a small circular wooden table with 3 curved legs topped with a circle of marble. The shop proprietor told her it was 70 years old, so she bought it for a song, shined it up, and stuck it in her living room, where it immediately became a staple of our house. The coffee table lasted her through 3 kids' college graduations, a move in 2000, and countless family parties and events, still shiny and looking new and gorgeous. It's as much a part of the family now as any of us kids. Now, to last night, the entitled mother's birthday recently occurred. So since she had given Mom a birthday celebration last month, Mom decides to return the favor, inviting the entitled mother, her husband, and their kids to our house for lobster. Already, I'm not a fan of this. Whenever the entitled mother and her kids come over, my mom makes a serious effort to give the kids something fun to do while the adults talk. We have a collection of coloring books, blocks, dolls, Legos, puzzles, action figures, and a TV in the basement from when my siblings and I were growing up. And Mom even bought them some new toys herself. But inevitably, the kids will play down there for 2 minutes and then come to their mom to complain that they're bored, then proceed to wreak havoc on our house. My parents, who the entitled mother sees as her kids' aunt and uncle, have warned the kids many times not to jump on things, but they do not listen. The oldest kid is also very combative and likes to pull hair and hit people, as I learned firsthand and broke a holiday decoration given to my dad by his late mother. Of course, the entitled mother coddles her kids and coos that they're the best in the world and all that nonsense. I've told my mom repeatedly that I don't want to be around the kids or their parents, but she brushes it off. In fact, she likes to tease me for not interacting with the entitled mother and not coming downstairs when the entitled mother visits, and says that the entitled mother shouldn't get in the way of me living my life. I live with my folks and am invited to attend the party, but make my usual choice of opting out. Since I've just finished the first week of a new job, I intend to celebrate with a day at the bookstore and a night with friends. But yesterday morning, As I was preparing to leave, Mom asked why I was going to leave her to deal with the two kids by herself. I told her that I wasn't going to let them get in the way of living my life. She laughed and wished me a good day, and I left. My day was wonderful. I spent the morning and early afternoon at my favorite bookstore, the evening with my friends at a wine bar, and the night with them at a karaoke room. I come home around 11:30 that night and enter through a door in our sunroom, where my parents are asleep on the couch watching TV. I wake them up, tell them about my day, and they seem genuinely happy it went so well. To be polite, I ask how party went. My folks get quiet and look at each other, and my mother, sounding very drained, tells me to go into the living room, the next room over. Confused, I look through the doorway and immediately see why. The beautiful table, now a century old, is broken. Its 3 curved wooden legs were bisected and splintered. There's a small crack in the marble top and a collection of wood shards litter the carpet. What happened? I asked. Earlier that day, around 6:30 p.m., my dad and the entitled mother's husband went to pick up my grandpa, plus a steamer for the lobster. While they were away, Mom had worked to settle the kids in the basement and reminded them not to jump on anything, then gone to the living room to converse with the entitled mother. As they're talking, my mother leaves to go to the restroom at the other end of the house. She stops in the kitchen before returning and hears a crash in the living room. Mom runs in, and lo and behold, son had become bored, came upstairs to the living room and started jumping on furniture, including the ancient table, while the entitled mother watched. My mother is predictably horrified and stares as the entitled mother examines son for injuries and reassures Mom that the kid is fine. Mom gets sick to her stomach, takes son aside and tells him in a serious but not yelling voice that Auntie is very disappointed in him and that he knows the rules at her house. The entitled mother overhears and berates Mom, telling her that she is the only one who can speak that way to her kids before coddling son and telling him that he's going to be okay. Mom then outright asks the entitled mother if she herself told the kids not to jump on furniture at our house. The entitled mother replies casually, "No, I didn't tell them not to." The husbands return, and all 3 men are shocked. The entitled mother's husband immediately offers to pay a carpenter to fix the table, which my mother accepts. Dinner goes on, but it is cold and impersonal between Mom and the entitled mother. This morning, the entitled mother, son, and the husband came by our house to give Mom a bouquet of flowers, an apology, and the number of a carpenter who they'll pay for. She puts on a smile and says thank you, but is very upset nonetheless. My dad doesn't want the kid in our house until he's older. Mom says she'll be keeping her distance from the entitled mother for the time being, since she can't teach her kids to respect other people's property or discipline them properly. My heart breaks for my mom. I don't plan on having kids, but if you do, please teach them at an early age to respect other people and their things. Well, not that long ago. In a small podunk town in southwestern Virginia, my kids, though not fault of their own, found themselves to be in the extreme minority at their school. If you said, the little brown kids, everybody knew who you were talking about. Kids would tease my kids because I would do their hair differently, cornrows and plaits instead of French braids and pigtails, or because my kids didn't have the twang the other kids did. They'd call my kids beaners wetbacks. And one of the moms who knew that I'm half black tried to get her daughter to call mine a little N-word. She wouldn't do it. We moved to a slightly bigger small town in southwestern Virginia. When we lived in that slightly bigger small town, we had moved into an apartment that was over a church. The church people learned that a single mom had moved one above them, and they were determined to bring me into their flock. I wouldn't have fit in. They were the holy roller types. The women were subservient, wore long skirts, no makeup, didn't cut their hair. I was allowed take no nonsense, single mom with short hair and wild makeup. Add that to the fact that I'm not Christian, and they abandoned their attempt to proselytize me, especially when I started blasting White Zombie on Sunday mornings. They told their kids not to play with my kids because I was a witch and would surely damn their precious little angels to hell. When we moved to a city in northeast Tennessee, my kids, especially crazy kid number 2, began to have problems with a little boy in the new apartment complex we lived in. It got so bad that my son didn't want to go outside to play. Then, one day my daughter, crazy kid number 1, decided to take matters into her own hands. She began to spread rumors about why we'd had to move out of Virginia, taking the things the church people had said about me as inspiration. She'd told other kids that we'd had to move in a hurry because I was a witch and had turned a little boy into a frog. All it took was a few brave little souls venturing into my eclectically decorated apartment to confirm that I was indeed a witch. They were no longer the little brown kids, but the witch's kids. One day, as I was cooking, they brought the little boy into the apartment so he could see all the dream catchers, fake, shrunken skulls, daggers, cinnamon broom, and other witchy things hanging around. Then one of my kids asked me, "Mom, aren't you a witch?" In true crazy mom fashion. I was only half listening and said, "Yes, sweetie." He didn't truly buy it until he saw crazy kid number 3 get hurt and present me with the boo-boo. He thought I was going to kiss it and make it better. I got down on her level and began to very gently rub it, say,
Sana, Sana, Pulito de Rana. Sino, Sana Arita, Sana Manana.
and kiss it. His eyes got huge and he ran off. He stayed away from me and my kids. Once he got over being scared, he became good friends with crazy kid number 2, and he helped perpetuate the rumors. My kids still spread this rumor every time we move. The spell I say is just a rhyme to help calm my kids down. It means heal, heal, little tadpole tail. If it doesn't heal today, it'll heal tomorrow. I know it sounds prettier in Spanish. Growing up, my grandparents started bank accounts for all of their grandchildren in order to save enough for college. My parents, nonetheless, were always too irresponsible financially, and still are. And as the people responsible for those accounts, each month my grandparents deposited into these savings. My parents would spend them on living expenses. During all of our lives, going to college was never even an option. It was mandatory for both my grandparents and my parents. Therefore, such expenses became mostly irrational. Once we were of the correct age to go to college, these accounts were at zero. Thus, my parents set us to get student loans. My grandparents died shortly after my brother started college, and by the time I was set to attend, debt was intensifying. Nonetheless, at 18 I was waiting for my turn at the bank in order to request student loans that I could have avoided if they had been responsible with money that didn't belong to them. Don't get me wrong, we had a lavish lifestyle, more like my mother did. In our case, we mostly got the essential expenses, essential clothes, 1 pair of winter boots, 1 pair of summer sneakers, and 1 pair of event shoes. Outside, though, anyone would think we were living comfortably. But at 18, I was now indebted in my own name to pay for both my bachelor's degree and an extra for a master's degree and an extra for a master's degree, also mandatory, but that I genuinely thought I hadn't even asked for. Today, I came to find out that the amount I had loaned that wasn't even enough to cover my bachelor's had been spent by them. I thought I'd be getting the amount in monthly installments, but apparently I had gotten a lump sum immediately. They spent it again on living expenses and each year struggled to pay for my education. Now I'm set to apply for my dream school, the one I've been working towards since I was 19, which is extremely elitist. I'm set to apply for a scholarship, but would still need to put forward 10% of the tuition, all included, which has gotten me to question my parents in regards to extending my loans for that period of time. I've just been told that I need to get that amount myself because they're both unable to pay it, as well as not being acceptable creditors for these extensions. I may have to give up on my dream due to their inability to live within their means. Edit. Because many are asking, I come from a European country that is particularly corrupt while at the same time having very high taxes and with a cost for public education that is the epitome of dumbness. While growing up, I never had access to this account. Neither was I aware of its goal until very late in life. When I required the loans, my parents co-signed them, making them responsible in case of non-payment. Back when I turned 18, I was very sheltered, had no means to be independent, and was never granted access to the account. But truth is, I didn't think I'd need it. For me, it was simple. I get the money, I pay my bachelor's tuition yearly, and that's it. Instead, my parents were making use of this money in order to subsist while pushing the payment of my tuition until very late in the year when, for some reason, they would be able to afford to pay that school year. I never got access to the loan. From my understanding, it was something I would get monthly into that account. And sometimes I would ask my parents to give me tenure just to pay for phone communications. One day, my mom replied there was no more money, but from my understanding, that meant that for that month there was no more money, and they proceeded to have to afford my communications and tuition when it could have been avoided had they left the loans alone. Years later, I'm now 23. I've been guilted into how the alternative path I chose in my education has cost them. This path is the only way I could achieve the career I'm aiming for while keeping many doors open. We've argued the cost of my master's because once again, they depleted the account that could have afforded this master's. I've had to work small jobs to pay for a post-graduation and still don't have enough to cover everything. At the present, I'm finally fit to apply to the last college I require to achieve that specific dream career, but that has been pushed away because they can't afford the 10% required, which is part of what they spent from my loans. So about 8 years ago, I'm selling a used car. Engine light was on. The AC needed recharging, and the fuel pump or something was out. So I go to my local, trusted sales site. It goes up with a few pictures and the words, I work weird hours, so I may not be able to accept a phone call. Please only text me. You had working swings and midnights, right? It was actually college classes, but same thing for me. So a few days in, I get a pretty standard text. Hi, I'm Matt. Is your car still for sale? Matt isn't his real name, but you get the idea. So text back that it is. A few standard texts about price. Why is the engine light on? Who did you get the quote from? I listed an approximate price on the repairs as quoted from my trusted mechanic and whatnot, go back and forth. The next day, I got a text from him saying, are you gonna take all your stuff out of the car before you sell it to me, or is that my job? Unwarranted hostility. Really? Really? He's not the only interested party. So I text him back, I'm not selling the car to you, so don't worry about it. I never said I would sell it to him. He never asked if he was the only interested party and others were arranging test drives already. I didn't need him and his less than full price, partial commitment. And the stuff he was complaining about is 3 textbooks in a bag I keep clothes in. 4 things. This guy didn't like to take no for an answer and started calling and texting about how my car's paint is peeling. True, but the pics and descriptions said so. And how dare I ask so much, $1,000, for a weak car. I started replying for a time telling him he wasn't going to get the car, that I had other interested buyers, so he didn't need to worry about it, etc. Then things got personal. This site gave you the option to link to Facebook, so you could post it both places at the same time. So I didn't have my privacy settings turned down, as it was still early into Facebook's absolute reign. And I actually trusted them at the time. Silly me, I know. I hadn't anticipated that he would be able to find my info through the website's post and find my name, my location, pictures of my kid, my mother-in-law's obit, etc. Surprised me, he did. He starts to text me about how I should be ashamed of myself for saying no to him, a muscular dude, and me being a quite round female. He included a picture in one text, and he wasn't the muscular-built man he claimed to be. He looked like a beanpole with 2 ab muscles. He asked me if I even knew everything about cars or if I made the post while on my period, so I didn't know what I was talking about. He texted that I should be lucky I was already married or else he would come to my house and show me how a real man handles a little witch. He got close but didn't have an address, and the way my address pulls up on GPS, he never would find my apartment, thankfully. Small side info. Since I was in college at the time and needed a more flexible schedule, I worked as a school crossing guard. Every 2 weeks or so, we'd go in to sign our time cards in order to get paid. This crossing guard gig was a hire through my local PD. Not all crossing guard gigs are the same, but this one was. During one of these visits into the office, I was using my phone while I was waiting for my boss to get to me, my name being low in the alphabet. I hadn't yet blocked the dude as it hadn't been long since this started and I was hoping it would fizzle on its own. I didn't check my phone in class, choosing to turn it off to avoid a DH ding on it the entire day, and I was often flooded with several hours of texts all at once. What I saw on my phone drove me over the cliff. He started texting about pictures I had posted on Facebook about my 8 or 7-year-old son. He had just majorly crossed the line. The cleanest version of his text included things like, your kid is just as ugly as you are. I hope you don't plan on him leaving home to get a wife anytime soon. And how a smudge of dirt on his face from a day at the zoo looked like I beat him. I didn't sell you a car, and you're taking out your rage by threatening to abuse me and accusing me of beating my kid? Oh no. Apparently I was loud when I said what I did because my boss stepped right over to me next and asked what was wrong. Great person. 10 out of 10. I told her that I was getting these abusive texts from a weirdo that tried to buy my car. I told her I was about to erase the texts and block him, but she's like, no, wait, don't do that. Let me see your phone. So happy I didn't delete them because this next part still makes my heart sore. I offer and she takes my phone, reading all the sick and vile things he texted to me. She tells me to wait until she's cleared the lobby of the other crossing guards, so I do. She then tells me to follow her behind the security doors at the PD station, still having my phone. I don't know what's happening, but I liked and trusted her, so I do. I follow her back to her office where she works on her computer, referring to my phone on occasion. She asks if all I have is the phone number or if I got his name too. I tell her I only got a first name and scroll to the text where he introduced himself. A semi-uncomfortable amount of time later, she hands back my phone. Something to mention, my boss isn't just administrative. I didn't know it at the time, but she's a full-on lieutenant in the local PD. She came up the ranks from patrol, moving to a position where she exclusively investigated child elder disabled abuse complaints before moving into her current desk position. Needless to say, she didn't take people threatening harm to kids lightly. Because I hadn't blocked the number, I still had the text messages with the dude's name, and she had used it to cross-search him and the phone number. Long story short, she knew exactly who he was. She says not to worry, but don't delete or respond to his texts anymore. She had it. If it got worse, I should call her or 911 as appropriate right away. Unconcerned and happy she had the situation in hand, I left and went to class. When I'm back to the office to sign my next time card 2 weeks later, I had several unread texts from the guy. I had filtered them, so I didn't see them pop up and hadn't read them. I had sold the car, for full asking price, and all but forgotten the entire situation. My boss tells me to wait for her again as she has something else for me to sign, and I again return to her office. She briefly explains what she had for me, what an actionable complaint that she needed me to sign for my issue 2 weeks ago. I remember everything all over again. She must see my face because she tells me not to worry, and that she can tell me what's going on more after I actually sign the form. So I do. Dear Reddit, this is the best situation anyone could have asked for. The phone number tied to many people as the provider was known for cheap cell service for those that were desperate for a way to contact People Services Employment. But with the name Matt, again, fake name, she's able to find out who was messing with me. She then got a driver's license, which led to an address, which led to a police report for possible domestic violence. Fall down the rabbit hole some more, and you find out that this dude had 5 kids by 4 women, and he was in arrears on his child support to them all. Hadn't been paying for 10 years, and it was in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $50,000, if memory serves. But he somehow, just 2 weeks ago, requested a title transfer for a new, to him, quite fancy old car. I don't remember the kind, but think high-end car show and massive insurance premiums. Being so far in arrears meant that my boss was able to place a seizure order on the car so it could be sold to pay back the child support. One of the baby mamas lives in a state where fleeing child support meant you could have a warrant issued for your arrest. When she called the interested parties in that state to see if they wanted her to execute the arrest warrant, they said yes with much haste. That was a funny turn of phrase, so I always remembered it. One conversation later, my boss was able to determine that he was using the brother's social security number on his employment forms to avoid child support garnishments. This is all sorts of illegal, so she notified the guy's heart department so it could be corrected. They informed her he would be fired for fraudulently submitting false documents. She then told me that about 4 days ago, she had executed the warrant on the dude for felony child abandonment, and that the state he was to be held for was already en route to pick him up. It carried a 8-12-year sentence, and he still had to pay his back child support. I could have dealt with the comment. I could have dealt with the not taking no for an answer, even dealt with the cyber stalking. A little. But when your twisted mind sees that it's okay for you to bring my kid into the picture, you have crossed the line. If you would have stopped it, no, you wouldn't be in jail right now.